So hello and welcome back to this Downfall Idealistic Crusade. This video is going to be a bittersweet video in a way because it's going over the final titles I picked up in the last and final Warner Archive or WB Shop 4 for 44 sale on all of the Warner Archive titles, which has become something that all Blu-ray fans, all film fans, all cinephiles, and all physical media collectors in general have come to really, anticipate and go crazy on at least once or twice a year, because it's a way for us to be able to get all the great multitudes of Warner Archive titles at much more affordable pricing. So there are several titles in this order that are discs I was already going to pick up, brand new releases I was so excited for. But when COVID happened and that caused various shipping delays and things, it meant that titles I was already going to buy, I was like, it's going to be closer to a 4 for 44 sale. So I held off just a little bit on the one or two I was really dying to get because, like as usual, I knew there would be a 4 for 44 sale coming up. But unfortunately, this is the final one, at least for the time being, because the WB shop has now ostensibly closed. It was never actually run and operated by Warner themselves, and I think they ended their contract with a third party. Warner Archive itself is still continuing in the same manner it always has, but it's yet to be known if they're going to have any other outlet that will have these crazy, amazing sales. And this one in particular, there are also some coupons floating around for like an extra 10-15% off, depending on what time you were able to partake in the sale. So that made the final sale not only more enticing, more bittersweet, but I also went a little bit crazy and ordered way many more discs than I was originally going to, than I usually do. Typically, I try and chip away at least, 4 titles to get the discount, making them about $11 per title. And of course, it includes their entire MOD DVD line for the most part. It's usually the sale is everything but the newest titles and the pre-orders. But I have, as of yet, not really delved very heavily into the DVD program, which if I did that, I'd just be off the deep end, because their MOD DVD program was really the one that got the ball rolling, and no one has gone to the lengths that they have in terms of getting the most catalog titles out and available on disc. But I usually focus on the Blu-rays, because the Warner Archive Blu-rays are, which everybody always asks, but it should be well known by now, they are all press disc. And, Warner Archive really does the best job in the business in terms of perfect maxed out bit rates and great encodings, and doing each title justice as best as they can, even if they are not able to afford doing a brand new 4K scan. On almost every title, it's from a fresh restoration that they've gone back to the best available materials. And when you buy a Warner Archive title, it's going to be the best that can possibly be done, outside of a top tier, tons of money thrown at it release that's going to come out on 4K UHD with all the bells and whistles and things. Warner Archive is not about that, and that also allows them to get more titles out and to keep the price down, which is really helpful for collectors like myself who are on who are on a budget, because budgetary concerns unfortunately keep us from buying all the discs and titles that we would like to beef up our libraries. So you always feel like your film library is woefully inadequate compared to others and all the titles you wish you had. But so with that coupon floating around as well, plus it was the last sale, and there's no telling if there's ever going to be another sale outlet like this, in terms of being able to cherry pick the titles you really want and get titles you've been meaning to get, and other titles as well, for $11 or less each, which is most Warner Archive titles are retailing at $21.99 is the usual price. So knocking them down to $11, and then with the coupon, it dropped them down to about $9.35 per title. I went a little crazy. So I ordered way more titles than I usually do. Usually I order about 4 or 5 and just try and chip away at stuff. So this is a mixture of newer titles, titles I've really wanted, titles I've always put back and never gotten. It's sort of a mixture. And I guess what we'll do is, if you've seen my other videos, you know I have my collection organized chronologically, but I have separate sections for various directors, producers, actors, actresses, some of my favorites and notable people. I'd like to keep their their titles together. So just going through those just alphabetically, and then we'll get to the other titles chronologically. Now, this first one was directed by Delmer Daves, so I've got it under the D section of my director shelf. And Delmer Daves is one of those directors who has a lot of really interesting titles from the classic period and beyond. Probably I can't even pick a favorite, but so many interesting films, even films like the great Dark Passage, which may be my favorite Bogey and Bacall picture, actually. But anyway, this one is a film I haven't seen in a long time, and this was a Warner Archive full-blown restoration, which they had to do a lot of work on. There was a great episode of the Warner Archive podcast talking about how much work went into this, and so this is one of those I've almost gotten on several sales before, and I was like, I'm going to regret if I don't get it now. So I picked up the Warner Archive release of The Hanging Tree, which is the really fantastic Delmer Daves directed Western from the late 1950s with Gary Cooper. It's a much darker Western than what you would ostensibly think of, and Cooper was doing a lot of these darker Westerns in this later period of his career. So I've really been wanting to see this again from a full-blown restoration from the Warner Archive, and they really went into detail on the podcast, but it was definitely one of those that was it did take a lot of work to really bring this to HD and have it look, nicer than what we got on the DVD. So I've seen the DVD, I just never owned a copy of it. I think I maybe rented it from Netflix a long time ago. Yes, I'm a nerd. I still get DVDs in the mail. But anyway, always meant to get it and rewatch it again, and really wanted to see this restoration, so this was a no-brainer. I used this as an excuse to chip off and get all the John Ford titles that I hadn't gotten yet. So I had some, and Warner Archive had been slowly but steadily going through and doing the John Ford titles that of course were in the Warner library that hadn't already been done. It's always going to be your big titles first. So of course The Searchers was a very early Blu-ray, and it's so early, in fact, and people still debate about the color timing and stuff. I really hope that gets redone. It really needs a 4K release. But Warner Archive has done some beautiful Ford titles, so I chipped away at those. So first we have They Were Expendable, which is one of the great war films, one of the great military films. Just a beautiful picture if you've never seen it. Of course, I have it on DVD, as you can see here, and the good old Ford and Wayne box set, but I've been meaning to get this, so I chipped away at all of the Ford titles. And so it does include the trailer, but there's no major special features, at least I don't believe there are. But just another beautiful new HD transfer from the Warner Archive, and again, it's a Ford title, so it was on my must-get list anyway, but I used this as an excuse to chip away at the ones I hadn't gotten yet. So, of course, that means I also picked up She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, which is the one of the Cavalry Trilogy films. Again, I have it on DVD in the box set here. I also have the Laserdisc edition, which is in the John Wayne RKO Laserdisc box set. So I'm a John Ford fan, if you couldn't tell. But anyway, beautiful release. It brings over the little home movies section that was on the DVD plus the trailer. So it's some vintage behind the scenes, actually, home movie footage shot around the production time period. So that carries over from the DVD, and seeing Ford films in HD, even though the DVDs were pretty good, I mean, it's like getting to see a great painting, and versus getting to see it in an art museum versus getting to see it on a reprinting or printed in a book. The amount of scale and the not just the increase in resolution, but the increase in clarity and better contrast. It's just across the board. It's giving these films a new life. And that goes further into the great, supremely underrated film Wagon Master, which is another fantastic Warner Archive release. This is a title I wanted to get. It's not in any of the box sets, so I had literally finally gotten the DVD. I had tracked it down, and then like not even a week later, Warner Archive announced they were going to do it. So it's been on my to-get list for some time. It does port over the commentary from the DVD and the lovely, wonderful artwork. So this is another must. Beautiful scan. It looks gorgeous. So of course, that always seems to be the case when you finally track down a random, very stubborn DVD that doesn't pop up all the time, that's when somebody announces a Blu-ray. But this was another must. And then this is the newest release that spurred me on to just go ahead and get all the other 4 titles I hadn't got yet. So, of course, I picked up Mr. Roberts from a beautiful new transfer, and this replaces the really aging DVD, which is actually based on the old Laserdisc, which I did finally find. And that's a nice LD. It's a very late release, so that's why the DVD is a very early DVD. This ports over the commentary and the trailer, but the LD and the DVD do have 1 or 2, I can't remember how many, but it's an extra little bit of material. So if you want absolutely everything, you will have to hang on to that old DVD. But this was a total surprise. I was so happy to see that they did this. Again, any Ford material is just a welcome addition on Blu-ray and should be on Blu-ray no matter what. And of course, they did use the original artwork, which I really appreciate, being an original poster geek. So just a beautiful release. And this was one of the titles that was new for the end of 2020 that I was, getting no matter what. But then again, the COVID-induced delays started happening, and I realized I wasn't going to get it until, well into January, if not February, and then it started coming around the time of the usual season for Warner Archive 4 for 44 sale. So I'm like, well, on the 2 that I really want, maybe if I wait a little longer. Sure enough, they announced the sale and that it was the last one. So under Lubitsch, I have The Shop Around the Corner, which is an essential film. Everybody needs to own this film or at least see it sometime in their life. I haven't seen every single Lubitsch film. I really want to. I read Joe McBride's fantastic book, which is called How Did Lubitsch Do It?, which is one of the best film biographies you'll ever have the joy to read. But of all the Lubitsch titles I've seen, this one's still my favorite. It's one of the essential holiday films. If you know anything about Lubitsch, his comedies are about having a deft touch, but also they are so full of life and so full of energy and also a ridiculous level of wit. They're really sublime in the best ways. And this is a film that's, it's a great comedy, but it's also extraordinarily poignant. It has moments that do make you tear up. It has moments that really get and not just tug on the heartstrings, but literally just rip at them. And really nobody but Lubitsch could do that. It says something when, his disciples include Billy Wilder, and, as a gigantic Billy Wilder nerd, practically for my whole life, realizing that he was a direct, disciple of Lubitsch in so many ways, it suddenly made sense then seeing Lubitsch titles, like seeing this film and Trouble in Paradise and so on and so forth. But beautiful original art. This again replaces a very old DVD that was out of print, which actually copied the same source as what the Laserdisc has. And they didn't get to do a brand new 4K scan, but this is just a beautiful improvement over what we had before. It's just wonderful to experience in HD. I have seen this projected. I've seen a 35 millimeter print of it, and it's just amazing having an HD quality version in the home. It does bring over the stuff that was on the DVD. You do get the radio broadcast version of the film, and you also get the fantastic trailer. And this is one of those films that has an iconic trailer where you have the actors actually come out and introduce the film, and it's sort of fourth wall breaking. And then the best part is they actually pull in Lubitsch at one point, and it's like, oh, and here's the director, and Lubitsch actually walks on camera. So it's one of the great essential classic Hollywood trailers that does something outside of the norm. But this was just such a welcome surprise that they were bringing this in. You also get a really great short subject, which is about the early days of bringing sound into film, and it's part of the Romance of Celluloid series, which if you've ever seen any of those are really fun. So it replicates everything from the DVD. essential upgrade. This is a must-own. Just amazing to finally have this film on Blu-ray. It's one of the great gems of the Warner library. And again, it's my favorite Lubitsch picture, and I think it's an absolute masterpiece. And please see it sooner rather than later. Don't even wait to watch it around Christmas time. But of course, once you see it, you'll want to watch it every time it starts snowing, especially around December. Next up, under the William Wyler section, this is the film Dodsworth, which is a brand new full-on restoration with cooperation from the Academy and the Film Foundation, released via Warner Archive. This is a beautiful looking disc, brand new special features. I was just so happy that they finally did this, because the last time I saw this was years ago on DVD, I believe it was. And just any William Wyler title is worth your time. And just beautiful original artwork. This was a complete surprise, and one I'd been meaning to get. It immediately leapt in my cart, and I'm like, yes, I'm going for this. Especially Warner Archive titles that have, are from restorations that involve UCLA or the Film Foundation or the Academy. Not that they're better than what Warner Archive does in-house with, Warner MPI and everything, but they are from, full-scale, full-blown restorations that have, many, many man-hours put into the research and the restoration process and the presentation. So I really appreciate getting films like this that have had amazing restorations that then in turn get amazing discs made by the Warner Archive, because you're going to get a release that has, perfect disc manufacturing and has a maxed out proper encode that's going to take up every single available bit of space on a Blu-ray disc and not have a bunch of space left over. And also, it's not going to break your wallet either. So it's just it's something extra special when you get these particular Warner Archive Blu-rays that are from full-blown restorations from, again, UCLA or the Film Foundation or the Academy. Now, this is one that I've put back a million times. I've wanted to get this since they announced it, but again, there's always one that pops up that keeps you from getting the ones that you were going to get, and then you build up a backlog. I know when I started doing this, I had about 65 Blu-rays in my cart, and I could not afford that, although I really wanted to. So it was a definite struggle trying to whittle this down. So I did try to get a number of titles that I've been meaning to get for ages. So as a gigantic Terrence Young fan, it was killing me that I didn't have this already. So of course I picked up Wait Until Dark, which is probably his best regarded film post his James Bond years. So this is the 1967 fantastic thriller starring Audrey Hepburn, which is iconic, being the film where she plays a blind woman who is menaced by various evildoers in her apartment. And it's a fantastic thriller. Everybody always labels a great thriller as being Hitchcockian. This one, you can do that, but Terrence Young was great when he had great material to work with. And again, this is really his best regarded picture after, really after Thunderball in 1965. It is a great film. It was a welcome surprise to hear they were bringing it to Blu-ray. It does bring over everything from the DVD, so you get some nice featurettes, you get the trailer, and wonderful artwork that is perfectly representative of the film, and original artwork on the front as well. And something I've always loved about Warner Archive, they will bring the original artwork onto every disc. So that's why I like to show the discs as well. And of course, a lot of people do this now, but all the imagery they use and the actual printing of the labels is just always spot on and perfect. Now, moving on into series films, these two are, again, ones I always had in my cart, but they always would get overshadowed by something, and so the thought that I didn't have these yet and I adore these films meant that I had to go ahead and get them this time. And I'm not really one for musicals, but of course Warner Archive does so many great musicals and so many fantastic restorations that I am tempted to even sometimes sight unseen buy a Warner Archive disc of a musical, just because I know it's going to be so fantastic of an experience in terms of picture and sound and the restoration and so on and so forth. But these films I absolutely adore, because it's impossible not to love the Busby Berkeley films. So of course I had to go ahead and finally pick up 42nd Street, which is actually, if I did have to pick a favorite of the Busby Berkeley musicals, it probably actually is 42nd Street, even though it is the first one and it doesn't have the fantastic show-stopping numbers are fantastic, and they may not be as completely over the top and as elaborate as what was to come later on. This, of course, was the first one I saw. I did see them in order, but it's just something about the combination of the grittiness and the desperation of the characters and the depression and the fantastic numbers. It really gels together so well, and I love all of them, but this one may be my favorite. So I was very happy to see that Warner Archive brought it to Blu-ray, and I really hope they do the rest of them, because all these films are essential, and even for somebody like me that is not really a musical person, they're just so incredible. And of course, you then have the benefit of watching the amazing musical numbers over and over again with the clarity of HD. This does bring over everything from the DVD, so you get some nice featurettes, and you get some fantastic early Warner Brothers shorts, so some of the Merry Melodies and that aren't always in print on the actual collections for the Looney Tunes. So, of course, sometimes for some of these shorts, the best way to find some of them is when they're tucked away on the DVD and Blu-ray releases of classics. But I do appreciate that they kept the original artwork, which just looks gorgeous. And, of course, once again, they chose the perfect image for the disc label. So, of course, that also meant that I went ahead and got Footlight Parade, which is just another incredible, fantastic film. And, of course, this adds Cagney, this adds the amazing water sequences, and the actual plot of the film is involving filmmaking itself and classic Hollywood films that have a filmmaking aspect to their story or their plotting is just one of my favorite subgenres of classic Hollywood. So I adore this film. It's another masterpiece. And Cagney in anything is just magical. But beautiful transfer on this. Again, way ahead of what we got on DVD. So again, I'm really hopeful to get the other films. I'm especially waiting for, with fingers crossed for Gold Diggers of 1933. But this is just fantastic. If you've never seen these, getting to see them on these Warner Archive Blu-rays is a real treat for the first time. I would be very envious, actually. But these films have always looked good on video because they're just so gorgeously shot and put together. This also brings over everything from the DVDs, so you get some really great featurettes. All the Busby Berkeley films had some great materials made for their DVD special features. You also get the original trailer, and you again get more classic Warner cartoons, which again, they aren't always on all of the Looney Tunes packages. So, without trying to find wherever these are, sometimes the easiest way, or sometimes the only method of seeing some of these shorts is again when they're tucked away on some of these classic releases. But I couldn't let another sale go, and of course it being the final sale, without finally picking up the 2 Busby Berkeley titles that have been done so far. Keeping on with series titles, this was the second of the 3 films that I was already going to get the Blu-ray releases of, but then with shipping delays and things, it sort of timed up with it being much more financially advisable to just wait an extra week or two and get them in the sale. So, of course, as soon as this was announced, I was ready to pounce all over it, and my word, this thing is absolutely glorious. This is a title all classic film fans wanted to have. It's the second film in the series, and after the first film had such a magnificent Blu-ray, I was always very hopeful that Warner Archive would continue, and now they are doing the third film, and hopefully we'll do the other 3. But had to go ahead and get After the Thin Man, which is the second of the Thin Man films. And like the Tarzan films, the MGM Tarzan films, the second film in each series really stands, shoulder to shoulder with the first film. And for me, I think this film actually rivals the first film. I can never exactly decide which I like more. I adore all 6 of the Thin Man films. I think it's one of the best film series of all time. And the iconic pairing of Powell and Loy is just absolute sheer magic. But this film is so incredibly strong, and you get a really standout early Jimmy Stewart performance, and as a great gigantic Jimmy Stewart fan. That just makes it even better. But it enriches on everything we saw in the first film, expands upon everything, but doesn't go too far with that. It still has a fantastic, very convoluted mystery to solve, just like the first film, but it has that same fantastic energy. And it really invents so much new business for the Charles and Asta to go through that it's just an absolute magical time. So again, as with the Tarzan MGM films, I have such a hard time deciding whether I'd like the first or the second films better. With the Thin Man's, I do kind of lean towards After the Thin Man, just because there is so much extra stuff in there that builds on what we got in the first film. And again, this is a title I never thought would come to Blu-ray. I really given up hope, of course, long before the Warner Archive started. And the DVDs had gone out of print, so they're now quite pricey. So usually when I would watch the films, I got the Laserdisc box set, which you can get that for actually quite cheap. And I just used that to rewatch the whole series and enjoyed it on Laserdisc. And then Warner Archive did the first film, and I was just, over the moon. And now that we have the second film, and now the third film is coming out, it's just amazing. This does carry over all the features from the DVD. So you get the featurette, you get a cartoon, you get an MGM promo, and you do get the original trailer. This disc is absolutely beautiful. I never thought in a million years that Thin Man's could look and sound this good. Of course, Warner Archive is having to work with the best available materials they have, but they really achieved fantastic results with this. This is a must if you love anything about classic Hollywood and you've never seen the Thin Man films. Please go and check them out. They're absolute magic. This is the third film that as soon as they announced it, I was literally, I had to pick my jaw off the floor. This is one of those films that I saw years ago that nobody talks about all that much, and I could never understand it because it's one of the great screwball comedies of all time, with fantastic pairings. It's just beautifully made, absolutely hysterical, and just, again, unbelievably charming. So this is the third one that I was going to get, but then delays happened, and then I realized the 4 for $44 sale was just around the corner, so I went ahead and got it in the sale. So, of course, I had to pick up the immortal classic Leipold Lady. I've loved this film from the first time I saw it. It is absolute magic. It's, again, one of the best screwball comedies ever made. And again, no one really talks about it outside of screwball comedy nerds, or if you're reading a book about screwball comedies or about, great Hollywood films of the 30s, you might read about it in a book, basically. You might catch it on TCM, but that's about it. It does have some of the Thin Man sparkle because, of course, you have Powell and Loy. But it's really amazing to see Spencer Tracy this early on really playing up his comedic side, because his sense of comedy timing is vastly underrated, and everybody thinks about him as the great dramatic actor. And Jean Harlow is fantastic, and she's doing more than the usual shtick they would have her do in most films. But it's just absolutely fantastic against one of the great screwball comedies. And again, this is the title I've owned before on other formats. I still have my classic comedies box set where I first got it on DVD, and this does replicate all of the DVD extras. You get some nice vintage featurettes and promos. You get a original MGM cartoon and the theatrical trailer as well. This is another title that I own on 3 formats because, of course, I have the Laserdisc 2, and this beautiful, gorgeous new transfer. It looks better than I ever thought it could. So I am just amazed at this. It's absolutely gorgeous, worth more than every penny, and just another one of those absolute great surprises. This is a title I always tell people about if they're into classic Hollywood, if they love screwball comedies. I'm like, you've got to see Leipold Lady, and they look at me and they're like, what's that? Because they've never heard of it. So this is one that Warner Archive announced and then did, that I was shocked. It was like they were just reading my mind. This next one was an absolute must. It's one of the newer titles, but it's just a film I hadn't seen in a long time, and as soon as it was announced, new transfer, looks fantastic. All the reviews were really glowing, and it just was like, I have to get this. So I grabbed The Mortal Storm, which is directed by Frank Borzage, with reteaming the pairing from Shop Around the Corner with Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan, who are, just fantastic. This is a beautiful film, and I've already sampled this. I haven't got to watch it all the way through yet, but it looks fantastic. So again, I've seen this film before, but it's been way too long. I've never owned it on disc yet, so this was just something I was really excited to be able to revisit and actually check out on this beautiful new Warner Archive release. It does pull in a MGM cartoon and a vintage short along with the theatrical trailer, so I assume that's what was on the DVD of this as well. Again, Warner Archive, for the most part, does a fantastic job of, trying to get always every single scrap of DVD extra. So pretty much if it existed on DVD as in terms of being an extra and there aren't rights issues or clearance or something, it is, going to be on the Blu-ray release as well. This is another one of the titles I put back 100 times. I always regret I didn't get it. And now that I've been on my massive Sean Connery kick and trying to go through and rewatch his filmography and get to some of the titles I don't watch as often, this was one of those. I'm like, why don't I already have this yet? This is a really great film. It's definitely... I think it's probably the best of the later period Tarzan films. Tarzan fans know this film; it needs no introduction. But of all the various Tarzan films I've seen of the later films of the 50s, 60s, 70s, I haven't seen all of them. I've seen a good number of them, but this one is really great. And again, a real surprise when our archive put it out on Blu-ray. So this is Tarzan's Greatest Adventure, directed by John Gillerman, with a very young Sean Connery poking around in there as one of the baddies of the evil band. But this is a really nice, very gritty, very dark, but very two-fisted classical adventure Tarzan film. This is the kind of Tarzan film that you really wish that somebody would make again. This is extremely well made. And again, it's a really welcome surprise to see this on Blu-ray. And they've already done another one of this era of Tarzan films, and so I hope they do more. And hopefully, eventually, Warner Archive can do the classic Johnny Weissmuller MGM and RKO Tarzans, because those DVDs are long out of print. And actually, I have some of my Volume 2 that have actually, unfortunately, suffered the rot problem of some of the Warner DVDs. So I really hope that we can get more Tarzan on Blu-ray. Warner Archive has, of course, also done the Legend of Greystoke film, which is a great Blu-ray as well. So there is some Tarzan love from Warner Archive. So hopefully we can get more great Tarzan releases, and eventually, I'm fingers crossed, hopefully we can one day get the classic Johnny Weissmuller Tarzans. Well, this is actually a title I just totally revisited and saw for the first time in years on Laserdisc, because, of course, I am a Laserdisc geek, and I enjoy seeing what they did with transfers back then. But I never realized this film was, released 70 millimeter with a 6-track magnetic stereo in certain territories in Europe and the UK, whereas here it was just standard 35 mil and mono, apparently because MGM didn't want to put any money into it. But I was just blown away at how well made this film is and how well directed it is, even if the script is a bit scattershot. But its attention to realism, the set design, particularly the ending set piece set, is very reminiscent of Ken Adam and his great Bond sets. But this is just a fantastic film, one of the great spy films of the 60s, one of the great World War II films. And that, of course, is 1965's Operation Crossbow. This is the Warner Archive release, which has, beautiful new transfer and a DTS HDMA 5.1 mix. And I really wanted to get this after looking at the LD, because that Laserdisc was actually pretty darn nice for the time period. And they tried to utilize the 70 millimeter multi-track stereo, but unfortunately, in the last 2 reels, it seemed, it just suddenly went mono. I don't know if the source was damaged or they just didn't have the 6-track for the last reel or 2. But I really wanted to check this out after looking at it on Laserdisc. So, of course, this was in the sale, so I went ahead and grabbed it. It does give you the featurette and the trailer. And the trailer for this film is really interesting because it talks more about rocketry than the actual film. But if you've never seen this and you're into World War II history and spy films or both, this is really fascinating. All the performances are great. Again, I just wish the script was a little bit more cohesive, but it's so well made, so well directed, so well put together that it's really impressive. And basically, This film sort of takes the idea of what if the Nazi rocketry experimentation in World War II had actually progressed to the point where they achieved advanced rocketry, and there was no one left to stop it, but a secret group that had been inserted behind enemy lines to gather information up to that point. So it's extremely suspenseful, supremely underrated, and I'm really excited to look at it on the Warner Archive Blu-ray. This is a film that has always eluded me. I've always wanted to see it, and again, almost bought it before, finally went ahead and got it this time. And I've wanted to see this for a while because, of course, it has Bill Holden, and it's a Western directed by Blake Edwards, which just sounds kind of bizarre to think of, but the concept sounds great. And also, this is a film that was severely cut on its original release and actually got restored for the Laserdisc. So I was always going to try and seek that out, but never could find it. And then Warner Archive brought out a Blu-ray, so I finally picked up Wild Rovers, which is, again, a film I've never seen but always wanted to, and just sounds absolutely fascinating. So this was a must, and beautiful cover art. And again, you're getting the proper full-length version on this release at about 137 minutes. In terms of extras, it brings over a vintage featurette, which I guess was on the DVD as well. Show you the disc label. This next one is another one. I've put it back every single sale. I've put this in my cart and then put it back because I have to try and make my cart more manageable. So this is an underrated gem if there ever was one. And that, of course, is Time After Time, the great Nicholas Meyer film with the incredible Malcolm McDowell and the great David Warner. Just an incredible film, even if you're not into science fiction and literature. But for me, being somebody who always likes time travel stories when they're done well and they have intelligence behind them, I really like Nick Meyer pictures. I loved reading The 7% Solution. And of course, he went on to Star Trek, but also the whole concept of actually using H.G. Wells as a character and have him travel through time. And then you have the notion of Jack the Ripper as well, which ties into all the great lore around Jack the Ripper in literature. And being a great fan of H.G. Wells and his novels, the idea of sort of taking that character and moving him through history is very much like what Meyer did with Sherlock Holmes and the 7% Solution. So I loved reading that growing up. And then when I saw this film, it was some of those same ideas. And then I realized, oh, it's the same writer, it's from the same brain. And it's like, it makes sense why these are so similar and why I love them so much. So this is a film I've actually haven't owned a copy yet, and it's been driving me nuts. I was going to get the Laserdisc, and then I was just going to get the DVD, and then they brought this out pretty early in the Warner Archive, and it does port over. It's got a wonderful commentary track and the original trailer, and of course original art as well. But again, this is just a film I really love that I was so happy that they did on Blu-ray. But I just always, there were so many great titles that I would always put this one back. So again, this is just another, is like, okay, I put this back too many times. I am buying this now. I'm not putting it back again. And then last, but certainly not least, this film is an incredible picture. It's the impact that this had on me the first time I saw it, it really blew me away. I did not expect this at all. It's a film hardly anybody talks about. It's very underrated, very unknown now. It did cause a lot of controversy when it was originally released, but I think it's an incredible film. It's extraordinarily gritty, and it's I think one of the best pictures of the 80s, and that is 1985's Year of the Dragon. This is my favorite Michael Cimino film. Of course, you say Michael Cimino and everybody thinks of Heaven's Gate and the debacle and the fallout that caused, or they think of The Deer Hunter and then they just, don't really think about him afterwards. But this is an incredibly dark picture with a great performance from Mickey Rourke and the fantastic John Lone as the, essentially the main villain of the film, dealing with Rourke's cop, basically starting a one-man war against the triads in Chinatown. Extremely gritty, extremely dark, very much, rubs your nose in all of the darkness of humanity. It's really a classic gritty New York film, and ironically wasn't even shot in New York really. Production design on this film is fantastic. The cinematography of this film is really impressive. It really feels like a gritty 70s New York cop film, but it was made in 1985 and it wasn't even shot in New York, which is just mind-blowing. If you've never seen this film, I really encourage you to check it out. Even if you're not a fan of Cimino, even if you don't like Heaven's Gate, it's really kind of different from that. And again, it's my favorite picture of his, and Mickey Rourke is just fantastic in this. He's a really the lead character is really unlikable in some ways. He's very three-dimensional, extremely realistic to the point of there he does have aspects that you really don't agree with. What's also great about this, ports over the trailer, but also ports over the fantastic commentary with Cimino from the DVD. He really gives a fantastic commentary. And of course, I'm a commentary nerd. I listen to it even if it's terrible or it's boring. Or, I rip it and put it on an MP3 player and I drive around in my car listening to commentary tracks. But, of all the, hundreds I've heard, this is a really fantastic commentary track. And it's actually a really nice new transfer. This film came out on Blu-ray a number of times in Europe first. I thought about importing it because I really love this film. And I have gotten the chance to see a 35mm print of this, which was just absolutely gorgeous. It's really rare this film gets screened, particularly from a print. It did get 70mm blow-ups back in the day, and I bet it looked, amazing on those as well. But this Blu-ray looks really fantastic. It is, head and shoulders way beyond the old DVD. I do have the Laserdisc of this as well, which is a nice Laserdisc for the time, but it is definitely really impressive to be able to see this in Blu-ray on a really nice release, and that it ports over the fantastic commentary because the European Blu-rays didn't all have it. I think they have one or two extras, but they don't have the commentary, and this one does have the commentary, which is, again, worth 500 little talking head fluff pieces of what most featurettes are. So it's a really great commentary, really great, very underrated film. Definitely on the short list of the great gritty crime thrillers of the 80s with, a 52 pickup. And of course, the crown jewel of 80s darkness is To Live and Die in LA, Friedkin's masterpiece. But this film is really surprising, and I was so happy that Warner Archive brought it out on Blu-ray. So I'd been meaning to get this one, and so I went ahead and went for it. So that's what I got in the final Warner Archive sale. I wanted to just get everything because I always feel like I never have enough. It's like I need all of them. I need to give all of them a good home. I want to watch all of them, but of course, you don't have the time or the budget to do that. And again, this was the last sale at WB Shop, so the fear is that there won't be a sale of this type to replace it. Already they're advertising, Warner Archive on Amazon a lot more, so there hasn't really been an announced new storefront for Warner Brothers, or if they're even going to have a storefront or a site of their own. So it might become that, Warner Archive on Amazon primarily, or they might partner with the site in the usual way that Criterion, of course, does with Barnes & Noble. So it might still be a yearly or bi-yearly sale of Warner Archive titles, but at a specific retailer. And that might mean only certain titles, or it might not be as good of a sale, or it might just be, new releases instead of the vast back catalog. So it remains to be seen if we're going to get any sort of, new replacement for the beloved 4 for $44 sale that all of us disc nerds and cinephiles and film collectors and movie fans have come to just treasure and just kind of go crazy at once or twice a year. And again, it helped that there was a coupon floating around, so it made it a little bit easier, and I also was already going crazy, so the coupon meant I could add a few extra discs and be about where I was with 10 or 12 titles. So I jumped up to 18 titles because why not? It's the last sale. I can regret it later, but I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all. So went out with a bang on the last Warner Archive sale. Figured why not make it something special. And again, I've tried to focus on titles that were either brand new full scale restorations, and of course the titles I already really wanted and was already going to get. But of course, shipping delays and things had already happened, so I just put them off an extra week or two. And then titles that I was already really wanting or had been meaning to get or already had floating around in my head and been thinking about, or the classic titles I have almost bought like 15 times before that I always put back and never get. So I got a number of those because I wouldn't have a chance to put them back and take them out of my cart again because there is no more WB shop. So as always, I hope this has been fun for you to go through. If you participated in the final sale and you want to comment about what you picked up or what you wanted to pick up and didn't get to yet, definitely comment below. I'm always happy to hear about what you picked up, what you're interested in, and maybe what you're looking forward to with new releases from the Warner Archive. And they are still going hot and heavy and have some amazing releases and the slate for this month, and they've already announced they're just for next month, and they've got some real surprises in there. So thankfully, Warner Archive is still going strong. They're still doing amazing work in the same manner they always have. It's just the overall means of distribution and the idea of the 4 for 44 disc sale is totally changing, and the sale is now no longer what we look forward to every year. So hopefully we'll see some sort of sale return with whatever the final distribution plan in terms of online sales for Warner Archive is. But at this point, it's just sort of up in the air. So definitely, keep getting Warner Archive titles and when they come out, get the titles you're interested in. But it remains to be seen what sort of yearly or bi-yearly sale we'll have. Again, if any, there might not be a sale to replace the 4 for 44. So that would be sad. It would mean that I will have to go much longer before I will ever have a massive haul of brand new discs like this. But at least with Warner Archive, they are much more budget friendly to the cash strapped disc consumer like myself and like everybody, because their titles are already at a lower MSRP than most other labels and are relatively well available at different online retailers, and usually are on sale a little bit. A couple dollars off here and there always helps. So with that being said, thank you so very much for watching. Please keep enjoying great titles from the fantastic guys and gals at the wonderful Warner Archive, who again, I've said this many times, but I think they do some of the best work in disc manufacturing and literally they do some of the best work in all of physical media. They really are my favorite label in the U.S. They're right up there for me with Arrow and Indicator as literally doing the best work in Blu-ray of anybody in 2021, and their continued efforts to keep the MOD DVD line going and bringing so many vast arrays of the massive Warner catalog to disc in any way that they possibly can. The whole Warner Archive collection is just a treasure. It's really a treasure, and I feel I'm just scratching the surface with what I can afford. So I'm always happy and amazed to see what's available, and always excited to be able to look at more whenever I get the chance to. And these sales, these 4 for 44 sales, have always been a great way to be able to try out new things, get all the titles you really want, and get all the titles you've been meaning to get, because of course sales are great, especially when they have coupons added. So this has been my haul for the final Warner Archive WB Shop 4 for 44 sale, and hopefully we can have something to continue this fun sale sort of spirit with a spiritual successor to the 4 for 44 sale. But until then, keep getting great titles from the Warner Archive, and keep disc hunting, keep physical media alive, and thank you so very much for watching.